Thanks. I am so excited to be here. I went to my first Creative Mornings many years ago, way before COVID, in Denver. And I couldn't go to very many because it was an hour and a half drive and I had kids. And anyway, and I just thought it was the most fantastic thing on the planet that was ever, and way better than sliced bread. So just to be invited to speak here. So I'm just going to warn you up front. Sometimes I get really excited about what I'm talking about, especially if I'm passionate about it. And my brain works faster than my mouth. So I'm known to start sentences multiple times before the words actually come out. So this is not a TED Talk. It's not polished. It's just me. So perspective. Oh, I do have my little notes just to keep me on track. It's a particular attitude toward or way of regarding something, our point of view. Absolutely. Oh, is my mic not working? Oh, you don't have speakers. Oh, back there. Okay. Just raise your hand and go like this because I sometimes get quiet as I go. So if I forget to speak loud, just let me know. So everything we do, everything is scripted by our point of view. Our perspective steers everything in our lives, whether we are aware of it or not. Annalise Nin said, "We don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are." So, which is, there's a lot in that to unpack, but let's just start with the premise that everything is from your perspective. And where does our perspective come from? This is one of my stitch meditations that was on Instagram this week. Our perspective comes from our families, our community, and our culture, and we don't even know where they came from most of the time. This is just all the different things that make up the things of who you are. You can also think of your perspective as part of like your personality and how you operate in the world. This is the one thing I'm going to read because I wanted to get it right. It was found that the average person has 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. I don't know who only has 12. But I thought, well, I found statistics all over the place, up to 80,000. Of those thousands of thoughts, 80% were negative and 95% were the exact same repetitive thought as the day before. So we get caught in our perspectives all the time. We don't think about them unless we're challenged. And most of the time, especially the way a lot of our communication is on social media, our perspectives, the algorithm learns your perspective. And it will only show you your perspective because it wants you to be happy. But that doesn't help us create a better global community if we're never challenging our perspectives. The fish does not see the water it swims in. It's not even aware of its perspective. One of the things that I had experience with, which is just so funny, such a great story, is that my perspective is not the truth. So my family, my son, particularly my middle son, who became a chef, and we can read a recipe. We know exactly what it's going to taste like. We can taste the words. It wasn't until he went to culinary school, by the time I was, 40. I don't know if that math works, but he was going to culinary school, and he came home on during a break and went, "Mom, they can't do that. They can't taste the words. They don't know what that is." So we think our perspective is how other people see the world. I'm going to tell you my story in these little bit of big awakenings of perspective. The first one was in college. I was a business major. And In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters, I remember this book because it was the first time I heard the words frame of reference. Now, this was a long time ago, everybody. So there was not the internet. We had one computer at my high school, and the girls weren't allowed to touch it. So the world was very different then. So when I heard the term frame of reference and that everybody has a different frame of reference, I was shocked. I thought I lived in a small community, and everybody knew everybody. You pretty much knew everybody at the school, and to be faced with the fact that not everybody thought the same way I did was huge. Now we're doing much better these days, but that was my first awakening, as I call it. My second awakening came much later, and it was when I was getting ready to homeschool my kids. My kids were sick. They had a lot of things that none of the doctors could figure out. It's like, it looks like this, but it's not that. And so all three of my kids had different things going on, in addition to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. 3 boys. My world was chaos. So I decided that in order for my middle son to actually survive puberty, I was going to have to homeschool. So I did what I do whenever I'm faced with something that is terrifying, is I research. So I researched tons of books, and this is when homeschooling was just starting to become a thing. And everybody was telling me, oh, it's never going to work, your kids are going to never go to college, they're not going to be successful, blah, 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 blah. So I read all the books that I could find. This one, The Underground History of American Education, changed my life, because it's all the stuff they don't want you to know about how the American education system was created. It's actually based on the model of the Prussian army. And once I got to that fact, I was like, oh, well, okay then. So maybe that's not really the most successful. And no wonder my kids are not thriving at school, because they're not soldiers. They're not army. Yeah, they were all crazy at that point. So, one of the things I want to point out, which is just funny, when I started to put this talk together, was that this was a newer version of this book. And after I read that book, I was really starting to explore my own textile art as more expressive, kind of trying to explain ideas. And this is literally the piece I wanted to make. Happy kids going into a traditional school building, robots coming out. I thought that was so amazing. And think about the perspective change on ideas and where they come from. Because I never got to make that, because I was homeschooling kids. I had soccer, hockey, it was crazy. So I never got to make that and never forgot it. And then I see that book cover. I was like, huh. Those ideas are out there floating around. If you don't grab it, somebody else will. So my third awakening, and I didn't go into all of my awakenings because that would have taken 2 hours. But I picked the highlights. Red Hot and Holy, this is kind of in the middle. I'd been homeschooling for a few years and just exploring lots of different topics. And I was getting very sick. We didn't know what the problem was. It kind of was it ended up being very related to the stress of homeschooling 3 boys that had health issues. So when I was reading Red Hot and Holy, because my diagnosis was mastocytic enterocolitis, which nobody had heard of. There was no support groups. And my doctor, a gastroenterologist, said, try meditation. I'm like, this is bad when the doctor's telling you the only thing he can do for you is suggest meditation. So I tried meditation. I was a complete failure at meditation. It just did not work. It was not in my wheelhouse. My life was crazy. And I was like, okay, well, this is not working. I'll just go and explore other things. So I was exploring lots of different spirituality things. And this book, Red Hot and Holy, I don't even think I finished it. But the important thing that just was like that light bulb going off is she said, and I'm not quoting the book because I don't even have it anymore, but meditation as we generally understand it is an Eastern male construct. It had no correlation, no connection to my Western woman life, especially with 3 crazy boys. So then I had this light bulb that just went off. I had just finished writing one of my textile books that was all machine stitching, and I was sick of machine stitching. If you've ever written a book for like tutorial book, you have to do the exact same thing 5 times at least, because you have to have all the steps, and it's really tedious. So I said, I don't want to sit at the machine at all. So I recently started back to my roots of hand stitching. And I was like, oh, this is very relaxing. So when I had that light bulb that went off about meditation is an Eastern male construct, I just went, holy crap. I have permission, I could give myself permission to figure out something that works for me. And I'd also been reading a little bit about walking meditations, and I was like, I couldn't do a walking meditation because I walk with somebody and we solve all the world's problems while we're walking. So that's not very meditative. So I thought, and I lived in Colorado, so half the time it was snowing. You couldn't go out and walk. So I thought, what if I create something where I can stitch? And so Stitch Meditation was born. That was 10 years ago, which is, I find it hilarious to say that I've been doing Stitch Meditation for 10 years because I don't do anything. I have my own ADHD, so I don't do anything for that long. That's why I'm a mixed media artist, because I like to do different things and try different things all the time. But this connected so deeply. And I'm going to tell you more about it in just a minute. But I want to get to the next, Homo aestheticus. And I know I never finished this book because I still have it, and my bookmark is still like in the middle. So this one, these two together, I was reading them sort of about the same time. So Homo aestheticus was, it changed everything I think about art. Because in there, her premise is that art came from us. It came from us as humans. So all the stuff, extraneous stuff we put on art, all the rules, all of the other things that you need to learn in order to be an artist, they're really not valid because art is human. And that, combined with Stitch Meditation, it changed my life about what art is. And I've got a picture. There's a bunch of my Stitch Meditations. Here's Basket. These are all Stitch Meditations. I've been doing it for 10 years. And so the process is, and you're welcome to come up and look at these and fondle them if you don't have sugar glaze on your fingers. Yeah, you can pass them around. They're not fragile. So this Stitch Meditation process is a 20 to 30 minute process where you just start at the very beginning. I started with, how do I feel today? And interpreted that in fabric and color. And it went on to, now I do themes for my community every week. The theme 2 weeks ago was perspective. So that's what's showing up on my Instagram. So if you go to my Instagram right now, you'll see my theme, my Stitch Meditations on the theme of perspective. And what I found out with these was, first of all, it was really a beautiful way to stop, breathe, create some mindfulness and some space in my life, that for when life is crazy busy, and in order to help deal with the stress. And it worked. Meditation worked. I'll just say I'm much healthier than I used to be. I mean, I did some other things too, but being able to take this process and really fine tune it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. There's one rule, absolutely one rule, hard rule. You cannot take a stitch out. Because if you take a stitch out, you're no longer in creative flow, you're in critique. And that will stop your art. It will stop your meditation. It will stop the being in mindfulness faster than anything else, is taking a stitch out. That is the hardest thing for people who do it. I have a couple groups on Facebook. One has 21,000 people in it, and I'm doing a 100-day challenge. That's like, I don't know, 1,100. I thought maybe 300 would show up for this challenge, but every day new people keep showing up. So it really resonates with a lot of people. But what I learned, in addition to mindfulness and breathing and letting go of perfection, which is why you can't take a stitch out, was it really broadened my perspective on what art is. Because we have culturally taken art and made it a commodity. It's something to finish, something to sell, your side hustle. If it's art, well, you have to sell it or it's worthless. And that's not how we're made. We are made to create our lives, to create beautiful things, to make the world better. And you can't put a price on that. So the most asked question that I get is, what do you do with it? And I say, you put it in a basket and you fondle them and you go through them and you remember, like, oh, I remember that day. I was thinking about this. And that's so hard for people to get their minds around because we've corrupted what art really is, what making and creativity really is. It's broadened my perspective on why we need creativity and why we need to be making with our hands, because it connects us to ourselves, it connects us to each other, and it broadens our perspectives on everything that we do. It broadened my perspective on mindfulness and meditation and on being present. And what does being present actually mean? We talk about it a lot. We talk about mindfulness. We talk about gratitude. But what does that really mean? We don't take time to slow down and just do something for ourselves. So the second most asked question is, what do I do with it? I'm like, you can sell them. You can turn them into something. But when you're creating it, you have no purpose other than the process, because it's the process of making art that is the most important thing. It doesn't matter if it sits in a closet under the stairs. It doesn't matter if no one ever sees it. If you write for yourself, if you sing for yourself, make music for yourself and no one else, it's the process. That's the most important thing. I'm not sure how I am on time. Okay. So I have 3 words and then I have 1 extra slide. Good. So the 3 words I want to leave you with are aware. Be aware that your perspective is only your perspective and it has nothing to do with anyone else in the world. And we share our perspectives with a lot of people, but we need to challenge ourselves to find other perspectives. And that is really hard because we've become a culture where you cannot have open discussions on topics that are divisive, which makes us more divisive instead of bringing us together. But being able to challenge our own perceptions and change how we think about something, about being wrong. As someone who grew up Catholic school from preschool through high school, like I did the whole thing. Being wrong and having ADHD, because they didn't know what that was for girls back then. It meant that I would get my test back and get a C and be like, why didn't I get an A? So because I didn't know how to test. But so I was always thinking that I wasn't good enough. And I didn't even realize until I was in my 40s that I was like really smart, because no one ever challenged that perspective of why is she getting, the nuns knew I was smart, but nobody cared about why I didn't get a grade. But I think I lost my point there. But we have to challenge ourselves, and that's one of the things that Creative Mornings I think is really good, is it gives us a safe space to talk about things and to ask questions and have different points of view and try and understand each other and where our perspectives come from. And wholeness is always the right perspective. Anything that looks at the whole of everything instead of just the pieces and the parts is always the perspective to look for. And if I have 1 more minute, okay. If you really want to change your perspective on everything we know, I recommend these books. There's really only 2. Ian McGilchrist, and he has a ton of lectures online. He's Scottish. These books are pretty heavy to read. There's some of the parts, I'm like, I don't even know for sure I really understood that part about quantum physics, but he's a neuroscientist, and he goes through all of the research all over the world about how our brain works. And what he believes is that our left brain and our right brain, what we think of as like our right brain is for creativity and the left brain is for the serious stuff. So we should only pay attention to everything in the left brain. But that is absolutely not true. And scientists are just really now starting to really discover that, and it's kind of trickling down to us. But all of the important things in life are in the right brain. And the right brain is designed to be ruling everything. But we've created a world where the left brain's in charge. And the left brain only looks at pieces and parts. It never looks at the whole. And the left brain does not know truth. It will make up shit. Am I allowed to say shit here? Yes. It will make up shit. Your left brain will tell you lies because it doesn't know anything. It's trying to make sense of all these little pieces and parts it has. But the right brain, the right hemisphere, is the one that knows all of the whole of everything. They really need to work together to create a beautiful world. And now, as we go in more with machine learning and AI, we really need to raise the consciousness of creativity on our planet. Because all of the problems that we have today are not going to be solved with our left brains. Our left hemispheres cannot solve them. It doesn't even see the problems because it doesn't think holistically. All of the answers are in our right hemisphere. And we just have to really re-educate the world that all the important stuff is in that right hemisphere and to pay attention to it. Although it doesn't have words though. So it's kind of at a disadvantage. So we have to understand how we can interpret, and it's through doing and making that your right hemisphere speaks to you. So that's what I have.